Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of Court Vision with me, your host Jack Guthrie, where we take a little look at the British Basketball League fixtures and news week on week, and we have a little talk about them. Now, I know, I haven't been around for a couple of weeks, but it doesn't matter because I'm back and I'm better than ever. So, what's coming up on the show? Firstly, we'll take a look at the news from the past couple of weeks since I've not been here, taking a look at the BBL Trophy Final and also some of the departures that we've seen from around the league. We'll then also look at last weekend's action and matches, also taking a look forward to the table and upcoming fixtures, especially as we close in on the playoffs. And then we take a step away from the British Basketball League and have a look at 3x3 basketball and what role it could play in the future of basketball in this country. Don't forget to like the video if you enjoyed, subscribe to the channel if you're loving British basketball content at the moment. Also get your comments and tweets over to me about any topics or things you'd like me to cover in upcoming videos. So without further ado, let's get into some of the news that we might have missed over the past couple of weeks. And starting off with probably the biggest bit of news that I could have missed, the BBL Trophy Final. So that was played a couple of weeks ago between the London Lions and Plymouth Raiders, and London Lions came out victorious, winning 88-82. DeAndre Liggins finished with a 28 index of success with 19 points, 7 rebounds and 8 assists, picking up the MVP award in the final. Dirk Williams added another 20 points, Orlando Parker added another 15 points, and really it was their ability to shoot the ball well from deep that saw them through the final. And Plymouth Raiders really struggled to defend them on the perimeter. And despite that, Plymouth Raiders also had outbursts of their own. I mean, for example, Ricky McGill once again finished with 31 points on the night. Will Neighbour also added 13 points and 11 rebounds, and we also saw Ashley Hamilton finally come back into the Plymouth Raiders team and finish off the game with 8 points. This will obviously be a tough loss to take for Plymouth Raiders fans, considering that they came so close yet so far 4 years ago, and the last piece of silverware that they have as a club coming 13 years ago, almost 14 years ago. Ultimately, when you take a look into the stats and re-watch that game, it really wasn't a good performance all round from either team. There were moments where London were in the ascendancy because of their scoring ability, but then Plymouth Raiders were able to defend very resolutely and pile up their scoring, particularly on the fast break, which is where Ricky McGill sort of came into the game. But like it has done so many times, you just have to give credit to London Lions and their ability to score points when they really need to. And ultimately, that was the thing that helped them seal out the game in the end. Moving into the rest of the news from around the league, there's a lot to do with departures, particularly very big departures, physically and impact-wise. We'll start in Surrey, where we have to talk about the departure of Ryan Richards, where the Scorchers announced that he would be leaving the club with immediate effect because he is signed for a Tunisian side in Stade Naboulian. Richards averaged 10.8 points per game and 4.7 rebounds per game in the league, and he played a huge part in the Surrey offense and defense, particularly the resurgence that we've seen of them in the past few months. Now, he will be a big miss, both in terms of the impact and the physical size he had. But when you take a look at the other players in the Surrey Scorchers teams, you've got Tony Hicks now, who's really performing well, stringing together consistently high scoring performances, as well as being able to play make. You've got Lacey James, who is physically dominating in the paint, particularly on the rebounding aspect, and bullying some of the bigger defenders in the post. When you take a look at the way that they're playing at the moment, lots of run and gun, fast break, high pace basketball that they want to play, I think it's not as big a loss because Ryan Richards was probably more of a defensive presence. So there's probably the likelihood that the defensive structure in that team may dip a little bit. However, I don't think this will affect the offense too much, despite the fact that he was a very effective scorer. Now, the next departures I want to talk about came from the same team, but not just any team, the team currently at the bottom of the BBL table, as if anything could get worse for them. And it's absolutely huge news coming out of Glasgow, as they had to announce that Christian Keeling and Ronald Delph, their American duo, would be leaving the club. Now, I believe it's due to the fact that I think their visas ran out, but this is a massive blow for them. Like I say, they're still the club at the very foot of the table, and the two players that they've now lost have been probably the two players that have had the biggest impact for them throughout this whole season. I mean, just taking a look at their stats. Keeling averaged 17.2 points per game, 5.1 rebounds per game and 2.8 assists per game from the point guard position, whereas Ronald Delph averaged 14.8 points per game and 8.5 rebounds per game. So you've got two players who are not just having an impact in terms of the scoring, but in terms of the dirty work, the rebounding. Christian Keeling was probably one of the strongest guards in the league. Keeling was probably also one of the most inexperienced guards, but definitely had a lot of brilliant technical ability. And then with Delph, you've got this inside scoring monster who was able to step out behind the three-point line and knock shots down. And when it came to defence, was able to swat shots, quite frankly, with ease and pull down ridiculous amounts of rebounds. So these two players, now being lost from the Glasgow Rocks roster, I don't know how they're going to cope. Now, in the results that we missed because, I haven't put a video out for 2 weeks, Ronald Delph was actually the second person in the BBL this season to get a 40 index from one single game. When Manchester faced Glasgow Rocks, he put up 32 points and 18 rebounds. Like I say, the two guys that have now left were instrumental to a lot of the good things that were happening in Glasgow. Now, whether it's the case of they'll bring a couple of players in before the end of the season, we're yet to see. But I think it will be incredibly unlikely considering that we've only got about a month or so until the end of the season. And without those two, is it likely they'll make the playoffs now? Well, I mean, it was incredibly hard before, and the task has probably now just got impossible. And to finish off the news for this week's episode, let's just scroll through the results that we have missed over the past couple of weeks. Yeah, it's quite a few, isn't it? Let's now take a look at last weekend's fixtures, where we are going to start off with London Lions, who played Sheffield Sharks and beat them 93-81 after another brilliant performance from the duo of Dirk Williams and DeAndre Liggins. Dirk Williams finished with 25 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists, whilst Liggins finished with 18, 3 and 10. And Faro Alahodzic also had a really good game, 13 points and 8 rebounds. And the Lions bench played a massive impact to get them that double-digit margin. From a Sharks point of view, there were also really good performances from Jeremy Hemsley, Jordan Ratinho, Kipper Nichols and Bennett Koch. But unfortunately, it just wasn't enough to keep up with the scoring pace of London Lions. As usual. Like we've seen so many times with London Lions this season, Dirk Williams' ability to score from anywhere and DeAndre Liggins' ability to set up his teammates has once again worked to be the perfect combination in taking down another playoff hunting team. Plymouth Raiders won both of their fixtures over the weekend, beating Surrey Scorchers and Cheshire Phoenix. Starting off down at SSP against the Scorchers, they won 98-90 in a really tight game that went right down to the wire. Now, Surrey in that game had a lot of control, particularly in the first half for really long stretches, and looked to be the stronger, more dominant side. But Plymouth Raiders had ridiculous efficiency from everywhere on the floor, really, and were able to put together a lot of scoring runs, particularly in the third quarter, that helped set them up for the final quarter. 5 Raiders players finished with double digits in that game, including Ashley Hamilton, their captain and talisman, who finished with 14 points and 12 rebounds. Now on Surrey Scorchers' side, there were 18 points from both Tony Hicks and Teo Agadenbi, with a lot of really good performances all round. But it was the efficiency in all of the shooting for Plymouth Raiders that really sealed this victory for them. Taking a look at Plymouth Raiders' shooting stats now, they had over 50% from 2-point range, 50% from 3-point range, and 76% from the free throw line, and their overall field goal percentage was 52%. I mean, any team that does that in this league deserves to win. The following day, Plymouth Raiders travelled back home for another clash against a playoff team at Pavilions against Cheshire Phoenix. The Phoenix dominated the first quarter, but ultimately fell flat in both the second and third quarters, allowing Plymouth Raiders to stretch to a huge advantage going into the fourth. Despite a huge comeback from Cheshire in the fourth, it was just too little too late, and Mike McCall's consolation 3 at the end made it a 5-point differential, with Raiders winning 88-83. Ultimately, the biggest turning point was the second quarter where, like I said before, Cheshire just fell flat completely. They only scored 12 points in comparison to Plymouth Raiders' 27 points, and Raiders went on an 18-4 run to seal out the half. In the game, there were also 41 points from Plymouth Raiders bench players. Now that really is depth. Now, despite some really good performances from Cheshire's starters, it really was a case of just too little too late, as their late scoring just couldn't bring them back to within touching distance, and Raiders really had the game in the bag after the third quarter. Newcastle Eagles had 2 matches over the weekend against 2 of the bottom sides in the league. So you're probably thinking, well, that's 2 really easy wins for them, isn't it? Well, not quite. They first played Glasgow and beat them by 20 points, and let's be perfectly honest, it was fairly comfortable for them. Cortez Edwards had another huge game for them alongside Ramon Fletcher and Evan Maxwell. Newcastle had more rebounds, more assists, more steals, fewer turnovers. You know, this is really a performance that we've come to expect from them. And after their 20-point win, 98-78, over Glasgow, they then played the team in second bottom in Surrey Scorchers, and quite frankly got battered. Surrey won 87-67, and when I say they dominated the game, I mean they dominated the game. They won every major stat category in the box score. The whole of the Scorchers starting 5 had an index rating of 15 or higher, and again it was another efficient performance from Teo Gdengbe and Tony Hicks. Whereas you take a look at Newcastle, and it really seemed like a performance where they were reliant on Ramon Fletcher and Justin Gordon, carrying the rest of the team on their backs, which obviously did prove to be enough in the end, as Surrey won after an unbelievable team performance. Bristol and Worcester kept battling for playoff security as the Wolves took a 5-point win, winning 77-72 against their playoff rivals. It was an incredibly tight game between the sides, but ultimately it was the rebounding and the free throw percentage and numbers of Worcester Wolves that allowed them to go on and win that game. Now, both those sides also had other matches over the weekend as they attempt to solidify themselves late on in the playoff spots. The Flyers beat Glasgow 87-79, whilst the Wolves faced off with London Lions, losing that one 93-85. The playoff picture after the past couple of weeks has really shaken up, with teams going up and down off of every result that happens in the league. So it's getting incredibly exciting as we get down to the wire. But one thing has been confirmed with the playoffs, that is thanks to the last game we need to cover between the Leicester Riders and the Manchester Giants. And that is that Leicester have secured the first spot in the playoffs. They're the first team in the league to be guaranteed playoff basketball come the end of the season, as they beat the Manchester Giants 90-87. Now, for Manchester Giants fans, this will be a gut-wrenching, heartbreaking, soul-destroying loss. Manchester Giants was so close to winning that game, and Justin Satchell had the game of his life. He was absolutely unstoppable as he finished with 36 points. Taking a look at his stats now, he had 81% from field goal range, 75% accuracy from three-point range, 80% shooting from the line, finished with 36 points like I've said, 9 rebounds, and became only the 3rd player this season to have an index of 40 from a single game. David Olf managed a game where he pulled down 15 rebounds. Jordan Whelan had 18 points, but ultimately it was the team play of Leicester that really got them that win, as loads of their players across the board put up good performances, including Gino Crandall, who came back from injury. And with those results, let's now take a little look at the league standings, especially considering it has been a couple of weeks. So here's the league table as it stands right now. So Leicester Riders, like I've said, they're still at the top. They have 20 wins on the season and they are the first team guaranteed to have playoff basketball come the end of the league season. Plymouth Raiders are now up to second thanks to fewer losses than the Newcastle Eagles, who sit in third. London Lions occupy the fourth position. Cheshire Phoenix and Worcester Wolves both on 12 wins, but Cheshire in the fifth position thanks to the fact they have one fewer loss. Then you've got Sheffield Sharks under Worcester Wolves in the 7th spot. Bristol Flyers still occupying that last playoff spot in 8th. Surrey Scorchers have now moved above Manchester Giants in the table, and they really look to be pushing for a late bid for the playoffs. Manchester dropped to second bottom now, and Glasgow Rocks stay at the bottom. And with the loss of those players that we've mentioned earlier, really looks impossible now that they'll get playoff basketball. Now, to finish off today's show, I thought we'd stray away from the British Basketball League for a little bit and focus on 3x3 basketball, or 3x3 basketball, or 3v3 basketball, whatever the hell you want to call it. Now, it was only recently announced that Britain would be finally getting its first ever dedicated 3x3 basketball courts at Writtle University College in Essex. For those of you that don't know what 3x3 basketball is, it's basically half-court basketball played with two teams of three, and it's best to 21 points or higher depending on what points you do score. There are also another couple of different rule changes, like everything that would be worth 2 points in regular basketball is worth 1 point, and everything that would be worth 3 points in regular basketball is worth 2 points. There are also some different rules, like every change of possession. So if you were to pull down a defensive rebound, for example, you have to go back outside the 3-point line before coming back in for your own attack. Basically, if you've ever played half-court rules or 3-on-3s, then you pretty much know most of the 3x3 rules. And this announcement that there will be dedicated facilities finally to 3x3 basketball in Britain is huge news for British basketball everywhere going forward. As 3x3 will be at the Tokyo Olympics and at the 2022 Birmingham Commonwealth Games, this is something that British sports fans will probably really want to get behind, particularly British basketball fans, as this could potentially be one of the best routes to getting more funding for British basketball in general. 3x3 is taking the basketball and sporting world by storm. There was only recently a Masters event on the World Tour held in Doha, where a team from Amsterdam won the title there. Even here in the UK, Basketball England has also announced that they will be holding a big 3x3 series known as the Ball Out event in the UK this summer. Now, this provides so much opportunity to show the best of what British basketball has to offer, and also allow us to really put together strong teams for things like the Tokyo Olympics and also the Commonwealth Games coming up next year. Now, like I said earlier, these are probably going to be very good chances for British basketball to secure some funding, build more facilities, and get more people into the world of British basketball, which is a brilliant thing. Hopefully this is the biggest chance that we get, particularly over the next couple of years, to really put British basketball on the map. And alongside the surge that we've seen in popularity for the British Basketball League and the continuing surges that we see for the NBA throughout the country, hopefully British basketball will soon be at an all-time high level of viewership. Alongside getting more media creation and stuff like that, I think over the next few years, if these things were to play out as we all probably hope they will, then British basketball will be in a really good place a few years down the line. And with that, I think that is everything for this episode of Court Vision. Thank you all very much for watching. As always, do make sure to like the video, subscribe down below if you're loving the content, get your comments in as to any questions or topics you want me to cover, go and follow me on Twitter and we'll continue the conversations there. Other than that, I've been your host Jack Guthrie, and I'll see you in the next episode.